Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello, everyone, and I am so excited to have on Caitlin Edelman in this podcast. This story is absolutely going to blow you away. Caitlin is a professional barrel racer out of Illinois, and the story that she's going to be sharing is, something I think everyone should hear, which is why we have her on the show. Caitlin, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited for everybody to hear my story, and I hope that it gets some of those skeptics out there to believe in it, because I know I believe in it, and I'm not one of those people who thinks that supplements are the greatest thing that God invented for us. So I'm so excited.
Well, we are excited to have you on and share this story. So let's just dig right into this. Now, we had a little pre-conversation before we jumped on here, just so it halfway sounded like I knew what I was talking about. But as you were telling me, within days of you being born, you were introduced into the equine industry. Tell us about that.
Yep, my mom is just as horse crazy as I am. She got me started with horses, and I'm pretty sure, I don't remember this, but I'm pretty sure she told me that the day they brought me home from the hospital, I went out and helped her feed. So I have been around horses my entire life. I'm 23 now, so I've got a few years of knowledge that I love to help other people get started and share that with them.
Yeah.
And,
That's awesome. So you did some Western pleasure, some gaited horses, but then you fell in love with the barrel horse and the adrenaline that comes along with that.
Yeah. Yep, I like to go fast.
Yes, Ricky Bobby, I think, is a reference right there. Yeah, there you go. So at age 15, you start training your own horses. By age 18, you are a pro.
Yes.
Yep.
So when I was 15, because my daddy's a farmer, my mom's a nurse, they're just good people from Illinois, and we didn't have the money to buy these $50,000 barrel horses like I was already competing against in high school rodeo. So I found this horse from a friend of mine, and he was 6 years old, and he was really not broke. People had rode him around a round pen a couple times, and my gosh, he had an attitude. And I have his brother and his sister and his mother, and they all have the same one, so I know it was just him. And we ended up buying him for $1,400. And like I said, I was 15, and I had been barrel racing since I was 7. I had never really trained my own horse, so we thought we'd give it a shot with this one. So trained him, broke him and trained him, and he ended up qualifying me just a year later for the National High School Finals rodeo in Wyoming. I was fourth in the state of Illinois on him, and I had only ran him for half of that season. I had another horse I'd ran. So he brought me up from 11th place to 4th in just half of the rodeo season. So he was a really awesome horse. He's that once-in-a-lifetime horse that you come across, and you'll never replace him. So
as you are young in your career, so you're going to 6 to 8 events a month. You've started a training business, ultimately turned into a full-time boarding and training facility, which is what you're doing full-time these days. But going back to this 1D horse, so I know a couple issues that, why don't you tell everyone just the issues that were going on with this horse, besides the fact he's pulling checks, by the way.
He was pulling checks left and right. I'd only took him to a few WPRA rodeos, and I was already $200 away from filling my permit. So being 18 years old, and I thought I was it. I thought I was doing awesome. And especially on a horse that I had trained, running against a lot of these super nice horses, and the girls riding them were insane. And I knew very shortly after we bought this horse that he was PSSM and he was tying up. And I had him on 6 different supplements. And when I say tie up, I mean I took him to practice one night and had him tied to the rail, and I was riding another horse, and he fell over and looked like he was seizing. He was tying up so bad. And that's when we actually found out that he had tie-up, and he was PSSM. Had him on 6 different supplements, the best that money can buy, and he was having to have muscle relaxer shots to run. Granted, he was still pulling checks. It was expensive to feed him, but he was pulling checks. and on top of this, he also needed Hock and Stifle injections every 6 to 8 months. Those started coming in. He was 10 years old at this point. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, he was doing really good on the pro circuit, and I'd take him to big barrel races, and he'd be in the 1D every time. I'd bet on that horse that he was going to be in the 1D no matter where you took him. And, well, what happened, I had a farrier. He was in a car accident. He was the best farrier that I could have ever had. He was in a really bad car accident. He was out. And the biggest rodeo of the year was coming up. It's the Sikeston J.C. Boo Hill Rodeo. A lot of people hear about it in Sikeston, Missouri. It's part of the Wrangler $1 Million Tour. There's $12,000 added in the barrels. And, there's a lot of money on the line. I really needed him. And I had another farrier cripple him 3 days before this rodeo. And he was out for 2 years after that.
Wow. So that had to have been, so here you are, you've got your 1D horse is pulling checks left and right. You're high on life. You're 18 years old thinking, man, I've made it. And then, then your farrier is out of pocket. And then another farrier cripples your only horse that you had.
Yep.
For the biggest event that. Yeah.
This was a 4 or 5 day rodeo. This is a big deal. But in the midst of winning and feeling like I was on top of the world, I had forgot about the fact that I should have a backup horse.
Right. Well, and you actually did have a backup horse. Yes. Tell us about your backup horse. Now, so your great horse is now lame.
Yeah, dead lame. He couldn't even stand up in the stall. He was so bad.
Okay, so now you've got the event. So tell us about your unplanned backup horse.
Yep, I had a backup horse unintentionally, but I had found a colt, and my dad got him for me as a little present because I was doing so good. And he was a 4-year-old stud at that. He's bred really nice, and he had only had 2 weeks on the barrels. I had just done enough with him to where he kind of knew that you should, go to the left, right, and then right. And ended up having to run him at that rodeo or draw out and still have to pay my entry fees. I thought, if I have to pay the entry fee, I might as well run something.
Right.
And he didn't do bad. He ran a 2.5 seconds off the winner of it, which I was impressed with. It was a really hard setup, but still not going to put me in the money. And when you do it for a living, you don't do it for fun. So, with my 1D horse being out, that put me in a really tough spot.
Yes. Now with your 1D horse being out, so he's crippled. So he lost a bunch of weight. There's abscesses. Mm-hmm. Tell us kind of what's going on with your 1D horse now that's out.
Yep. At that point, he looked depressed, like a human would depressed, and looked like he just had no will to live anymore. He just lay in his stall all day. He couldn't hardly even turn around in it, and he abscessed so bad that he blew off both of his front heels, just completely were gone. Mm. And that is a disgusting sight for anybody who has not seen it.
Yeah, no doubt.
But, and he lost about 250 pounds. And anybody who saw this horse, he was just a brick house all the time. He was so heavily built. And to see him in that state to where he looked like a rescue case was just heartbreaking. Hmm. And I knew if I could ever just get him sound again, I'll retire him for as much as he's done for me. And granted, he's 10 years old at this time.
Right.
So 10 or 11, I think he's 11 actually. But he's where he should be in his prime. He's now in the stall, unable to walk.
Oh, okay. So now we know that. So the condition on him. Stay tuned to that story. And now we're back over on your 4-year-old, which has had 2 weeks of pattern.
Yep. Yep.
So-
He was 2 weeks pattern, and I was entered in other rodeos besides that big.
Oh gosh. Okay, so now tell us
Yeah.
what's going on with your backup horse now, who's now your main horse.
Yep. He has come a long way in 4 years. So, he was running rodeos, and he'd do enough not to embarrass me, but he wasn't pulling checks. And he started doing really good. I took him to a big barrel race, and he placed in the 1D. And this is the first 1D run, and gave me the hope. Thought, wow, maybe he can replace him, my good horse. And lo and behold, this horse I had also broken trained him. And one day I got on him, was practicing him, and he bucked me off. And I thought, wow, there's something wrong because this horse doesn't buck. So I took him to the vet, and I noticed a bump on his lower jaw, right where the chin strap goes. And I took him to the vet, and I said, I think his jaw is broke. The vet kind of laughed at me. They're like, oh, this is a huge horse. He's 1,200 pounds. His legs are so big, I have to special order his leg wraps. There's no way he's broke a bone. He'd have to be in a trailer accident to do that, And sure enough, he broke his jaw, fractured it all the way through. And he was out for about 8 months. And I also tried all different therapies on him, hides, mask, and, magnetic stuff. And nothing ever helped. And he was out. So here I am again because I didn't learn my lesson the first time.
Yes. Well,
I have no good horse.
And I would assume that with a fractured jaw, pretty much nothing would work, no matter what you had tried. But time and healing, I guess, would at this point.
Yes, and that's exactly what the vet said. He said, there's really nothing, especially where the break was. We couldn't even do anything with it. He's just going to have to basically live his life until he fixes it, or it may never fix, So luckily, 8 months down the road, took him back, and he was okay to start riding again. But like I said, it was right where the chin strap goes, and I ride him in a hackamore, so I rely heavily on that chin strap, and it was hurting him because the break had created scar tissue and calcium deposits, and it was just painful for me to pull back at any pressure. Mm-hmm. Just the slightest pressure really hurt him.
This isn't the first time he broke his jaw either after the first
No, that was the first time, and then it was like he came back and he made, I think I ran him for about a month, and he ended up breaking it in a different spot, and X-ray confirmed breaking it in a different spot. So he was out for yet another, I think this one only took 6 or 7 months. Brought him back again. At this point, I have other colts, and I'm trying them, and they're not, making what I need them to be. So I'm out of the rodeo circuit for a while trying to get my stock built back. Yeah, so he broke it again for the second time, and he was out. And then I brought him back, and I made 2 barrel runs on him, and he ran in the 1D again, which I thought was amazing for being out that long.
Right.
And lo and behold, he broke it for a third time, put him out for another 6 or 7 months. And at this point, I'm just so done. I'm like, I'm going to try to bring back my 1D horse. I had tried before, and he wasn't ready. So I said, I'm going to bring him back. I brought him back, ran him at a couple rodeos, and he used to be in the 1D, and now we're clocking 2D, and I feel like he's given me everything he has.
Right. So just to clarify, so this is your main 1D horse that's been confined, depressed, and everything for a good 2 years. So
Yep.
So he's at a point now where you've kind of brought him back into some training. So you go take him out to some events. So your 1D is now barely 2D.
Yes, barely, and especially at a rodeo. If they're barely in the 2D, they're not going to place at a rodeo. So and. Still, before he was, this big, heavily muscled horse, and now, he barely looks like he's in rodeo condition. He doesn't have the muscle mass, and got a hint of ribs showing, and I feel like I was feeding him with a shovel, and I just couldn't get the weight back on him after he had lost it from his feet. And when he was running, I could tell that he was still unsure of his feet. Like, he would safety up, he wouldn't want to get in the dirt, and before this horse would, run on blacktop if you asked him to.
Right.
And, at this point, this is when I found Equinety. And I had tried everything else, and I was actually sponsored by a supplement company, and I don't believe in products. Even if I'm sponsored by them, that doesn't mean I have to use them. If they're not going to work, I'm not going to feed it. and I was sponsored by them. It was a big name brand company, and it just wasn't working. I actually stopped feeding that, and I found Equinety. And 4 days after I started just a single scoop dose on him, I took him to an open rodeo and got in the money. And at this point, I thought I was back on top of the world, just winning a little bit of money at open.
Now, going back to your philosophy on supplements, you typically will give any supplement a 60-day trial. Mm-hmm. Is your time period, right?
Yep. I give it 60 days because I think that's a pretty fair trial for anything to work and me see results on it. If I can't see results, I don't believe it's working, especially on a supplement. I don't think that it's the end-all, cure-all thing. Mm-hmm. But if it works, I'll keep feeding it, and if not, it's going out the door.
No, that's right. And the one thing with supplements, and one of the greatest things that we are so blessed with, and the amino acid combination in Equinety, it actually starts working within 24 hours. Now it's just a matter of what you can start seeing. And, of course, there's so many jaw-dropping stories and testimonials that we have. And, again, is one reason why we're doing the podcast to help get these stories out there. And people think, oh, my gosh, well, hey, I've been taking the Equinety or using it for 15 days, and my horse that has ring bone's not back yet. And I'm just like, okay, where's reality here? We've seen some crazy things happen within days, but typically when it comes to supplements, it's oftentimes going to take a lot of time because in our case it's an all natural supplement versus you give a drug, it could be instantaneous, but it's just a Band-Aid typically. So with your philosophy of giving a supplement a good 60 days to see results, you saw results with Equinety in 4 days. And what did you notice specifically?
Yep. So on this horse, I noticed, like I said, he wasn't wanting to turn really good, wasn't wanting to get in the dirt. And when I take him to a rodeo and I turn the barrels and my foot almost drags the ground, I think we're back in business because that's just the type of horse that he was before all of this injuries took place, as he was the type that would slide all the way around the barrels where you think your foot's going to drag the ground, and that's how he was again. It just made me so happy to see him back how he was and feeling good. The main thing, having him sound again, because like I said, this horse has done so much for me. I just wanted to have one more good year on him and then retire him sound because he deserved it. And
just to recap, so this is the horse that has PSSM, huge tying up issues. You had him on 6 different supplements. Tell us about what your veterinarian said, because you were having to inject like clockwork every 6 to 8 weeks, which is running you about $800 every time. Yep. So tell us what... 6
to 8 months.
Oh, 6 to 8 months, yes. So, so tell us what your veterinarian said when it was time to have the injections.
Yep. So most of the time I could feel the horse whenever he would need injections, and I wasn't feeling his signs, but I wanted to take him because I knew, 6 to 8 months, he needs injections. I've had this horse for 10 years. And
these are Hock and Stifle. Hock and Stifle injections.
Yep, Hock and Stifle, both of them, both left and right. So before, when he was running really good and winning checks, he was grading a 3 and a 4 on Hocks and Stifles like clockwork, 6 to 8 months, and which on a pain scale, that is severe pain. Like, absolutely, yes, he needs injections. If not, he's not going to be able to walk. So after starting the Equinety, granted, I also have an Equivibe, but I was not using it daily, and Equinety was. I'm very religious about giving supplements daily. And I took him back to the vet, in which this is a equine specialist, not just your run-of-the-mill vet, and he was grading a half to a 0 on his Hocks and Stifles. And we just could not believe it. The vet said, "This is miraculous. What are you doing? I have to know what you're doing because I've never seen this before." Yeah, and that's pretty. He's been a vet for over 20 years, so for him to tell me that, I think, man, maybe I should go to school to be a vet. I'm doing something right.
Yeah, well, that's pretty awesome. So the vet was shocked and wondering what in the world you were doing.
Yes, And for him to tell me, your horse is sound, like those words just mean so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of the times when I think a horse needs to go to him do I hear the word sound come out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, that is so for anyone out there who is tuning in and you're giving injections. And by the way, we hear this all the time. But from our standpoint, we're not going to go around saying, oh, yeah, well, if you give this, you don't have to inject, because we don't know your horse. I mean, you know your horse better than anybody. So in combination with how your horse is feeling under saddle and with your medical team and vets who really know your horse, this is a pretty profound confirmation, again, for us, just because we hear this all the time. So now this is the first time the horse hasn't been injected. Also, some of the supplements that you were using for the tying up things had been discontinued. Wasn't that what you told me?
Yep, the shots, the muscle relaxer shots he was getting before his run had actually been discontinued. But with the Equinety, he hasn't needed them. He's also off of all of his other supplements, as with my other 5 barrel and roping horses. The only supplement they get is Equinety, because I don't think they need anything else, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I tell you that, people ask all the time, hey, is Equinety safe to give with supplements or program, what I have in my program for my horse? So we always recommend, first of all, yes, it's 100% safe. We always recommend not to change a thing you're doing, just add the Equinety to it, which is pretty much what you are doing. Mm-hmm. And over time, you're going to be able to figure out, I know what my horse is like now. If I add the Equinety to it, which is the only element now that you're changing, over time, you're going to be able to figure out, hey, my horse is moving better here or doing better there. And so I think everybody who has a horse and is giving some kind of supplements, probably in the back of their mind, might be thinking to themselves, you know what, I'm not sure if this particular product is working that well, but I feel good about myself because I'm giving my horse something. But so these are some of the things that you could probably weed out. So what we hear all the time is people that are using the Equinety are typically saving 20 to 40% in medical, vet bills, and or other supplements. And I think this is a definite confirmation to that.
Yes, 100%. And I mean, just having to cut out the injections, because I was essentially getting him injected twice a year, and it was $800 each time I got everything injected. So, when you pencil out the Equinety and it only costs you, I think, between $300 and $400 a year to feed, compared to $1,200 that I was keeping to keep this horse running, that's a huge difference. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. Well, and we tried to price it as $1 a day for your horse. Obviously, if you have 12 horses, then people, that's $12 a day. Well, no, it's still $1 a day for one horse. So,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's get back into, your horse is back. Tell us what happened all of last year with your horse. So he's on Equinety, he's pulling checks again.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so I was taking him to open rodeos and pulling checks, and I still wasn't pushing him as hard as he was because I was happy where he was. I didn't want to press my luck too much, but he was making me proud, and he was really, people noticed that he was back, taking him to barrel races and rodeos and all the time, going every month, and he was pulling checks again in the 1D. At that and at rodeos. So just to have him back to where he was and feeling good again was just the highlight of my year. And then while he's actually coming back, so did my stud horse that I had, except he's not a stud at this point. I got a baby out of him and gelded him. He came back from that 3rd jaw break. And now he's my main barrel horse, and he starts outrunning my good horse. So I put a little bit more time on him.
And then you ended up retiring your 1D. Okay. So now you're...
Yep, retired this year. So all I said was I wanted to have one more good year on him and retire him sound because he deserves it so much for everything he's done for me. He made my dreams come true. So that's the least I could do for him, is make him comfortable and let him live out his life.
Oh, that's great.
So he's enjoying green pastures with his mama.
That's great. Okay, so he's retired, so now you're back on your gelding, the one that had broken his jaw 3 times. He also has a calcium deposit that's been forming on this broken area. Tell us about that.
Yes, he had it's probably about the size of a golf ball, would be the best way I could describe it. right where the chin strap goes on his hackamore, like I had said, where he broke his jaw. I was having problems with him with a hackamore, trying to adjust it and, try to dodge that calcium deposit on his jaw, which is very hard to do, and just could not run him. He was hurting, and I thought, well, you know what, I'll try Equinety on him too, because the vet had already told me that we can't shave the calcium off. So I put him on Equinety, and lo and behold, the calcium deposit has probably went down half its size. And I'm actually able to ride him with the hackamore where it needs to be, and therefore I have more control of him, because I literally was running a loose cannon. He's just done so awesome on it. I just can't believe it. It feels like every time I look at that calcium deposit, it just keeps going down. And wow. I just can't believe my eyes.
I've had people ask about calcium deposits and things like that, but this is really the first time that we've heard. And we have to assume that this is what's helping, because ultimately what the amino acids are doing, it stimulates the pituitary gland, which releases the hormones, and then the body, horse's body, decides where to send those hormones for the healing. So this is why it does so many different things around the body. So have you ever seen a calcium deposit decrease in size when they have one?
On my horse, absolutely. I mean, that was the only thing I changed on him. Mm-hmm. And he wasn't getting any other type of therapy or supplements. He wasn't on any supplements at all. So for me to see that his calcium deposit was half in size and I can start running him again, with no issues of it hurting him, which is my main focus. I don't like to run a horse knowing that they're hurting. And if all it does is, makes me know that my horses are healthy and happy and feeling their best, then I think that it's done its job, which it has 100%.
That's great. So where is he today as far as how's he running? What's he doing these days?
So he had a little bit of a winter break. His third jaw break, I brought him back this fall and was running him on Equinety, and I believe I ran him about 6, 7, 8 times in a month, and he was in the 1D and had won the 1D every time. He was either in it or won it against some really tough competitors and some professional girls and professional horses. So he was back better than ever.
So in combination with your training, we won't tell them he was on Equinety.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay,
yes,
so
I have training over you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, now one other thing to touch on. I know we're running really long compared to other podcasts, but there's so much great information here. So one of the things you had mentioned before he was cut, he was a very great horse around the mares and everything else, and then once he was cut, then he started acting crazy. Tell us about that.
Yes, he was an awesome stud. I'd take him to barrel races, and people wouldn't even know he was a stud until I would mention something. And I had him cut. I had a baby out of him and then had him cut because I needed him for a barrel horse more than I did a breeding stallion. I cut him, and this horse was a basket case. I could not believe it. I don't know. It was like a switch had flipped on him. I couldn't keep him in a stall. He jumped over my stall gate, tore it down, tore my fence down, belly crawled underneath an electric fence. I've never seen a horse do that before, but they can. And I took him to the vet, and we had him acupunctured, and he said this might help, this may not help. So I then put him on Equinety, that plus his jaw, and he is so focused now. He's actually running in the pasture with 4 other geldings. He's just doing awesome. I can't fault him on anything, and he can actually be across the fence for mares now and, be in a stall and be focused and comfortable and not so worried about his surroundings. And it's just done so much for him. It's really able to make him win, like I know he can. Yeah,
just more focused, calmer, less stressed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Now, before we wrap up this call, I know you've got multiple horses that you have on Equinety. Give us a couple examples of just a couple other horses with a couple other issues going on just as we end off this.
Yep. So I have a 10-year-old horse, and he has been diagnosed with Navicular recently. It was in December, sometime around the new year, and X-ray confirmed. And he has degeneration in his knees also. And the vet actually couldn't believe that he wasn't dog lame. Like, he was a little lame. I noticed that whenever I'd ride him, he'd trip a lot and he would fall down. And that what led me to take him to the vet, diagnose Navicular, and actually he is running 100% sound right now without corrective shoeing. He is barefoot. having no issues of tripping. One of my friends actually took him and was running steers off of him with no issues, and it has actually calmed him down a lot also and helped him focus. He was a little bit more of a high-strung horse also, and it has really dialed him in. And he is running the best barrels. He's actually running a second off of my gray horse, and he has only been running barrels for a couple months. So that was pretty impressive, plus having the Navicular.
We hear a lot of how this helps with Navicular. There's a couple other podcasts that we have around Navicular, so that's great. And then tell us real quick about your paint horse.
So I have a paint horse, and I use him for lessons. I'm also the stock seat equitation head coach for our local university, and I use him for lesson programs, and I'm going to start roping cattle off of him. And he came in from the pasture. This is a healthy 11-year-old horse. I think that he would be healthy if he lived on rocks. And he came in dragging his back leg, and I am not exaggerating. He was literally dragging his toe, could not put any weight, couldn't even pick up his leg. And I looked him over. At this point, there was no swelling. He didn't have a cut on him, no puncture wounds. I checked his hip. His hip was not dislocated. And I thought, well, maybe he sprained his ankle, just plain and simple. So I put him in the stall, getting some stall rest. Well, about 4 or 5 days went by, and he wasn't getting better, and it was over the weekend, so I couldn't take him to the vet, and my vet has a 2-month waiting list anyways. I went in one night to check on him after I would exercise some horses, and his leg was so swelled up from his hot to his ankle, I could not feel his tendons. It was just solid swelled up. And I thought, oh no, I'm for sure going to have to take this horse to an emergency vet call in the morning and have his ankle x-rayed or something. So I thought, before I jump off the deep end, I will give him a dose of Equinety and see if it helps him. And I kid you not, this was at 8 o'clock at night. I gave him one single dose of Equinety, and the next morning at about 9 o'clock in the morning, this horse was walking around sound with no swelling. And I was having to pick my jaw up off the hallway floor. It was crazy. I was calling everybody, and I said, are you kidding me? This horse is sound. And I called my mom, and I called my best friend, calling everybody, and I said, I cannot believe my eyes. Somebody come check me. This horse is sound.
See, now I'm going to jump in, because then people will say, well, where's the video confirmation? Where's that this is true?
Yes, I wish I had, but I was so worried. That was the first thing I said when I called everybody. I said I should have taken a picture. I should have videoed him. I will say my mom is a witness. She saw him limp.
Oh, okay,
so
there we go.
Wants to text me, I will give you my mom's phone number.
There you go. Oh man.
But he was limping so bad he couldn't even hardly set his toe on the ground. All he would do was spin circles in the stall all day because he couldn't even walk around. And I have 12 by 15 stalls. He could not even walk around in a stall. He was so lame.
Wow.
He couldn't lay down, because if he lay down, he couldn't get back up.
Yeah.
It was so bad.
Bad news. Wow.
I thought about riding his butt yesterday. He was so sound.
Well, Kaylin, I can't thank you enough for all your time. I know you're probably multitasking and do all kinds of things, and we went way longer than, probably twice as long as what we normally do, but there's so much great information in here that we just think needs to get out there. So I really appreciate your time and sharing all of your multiple Equinety stories here.
Oh, no problem. And I would be happy to share them with anybody who would give me a call. I will testify that this is the greatest supplement product I have ever tried on the market, hands down, and I will continue to use it for years to come. As long as you guys make it, it's going to be in my barn.
Absolutely. Well, we can't stop now. We started something we can't stop. So awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
You bet.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.